So I was listening to an interview this morning. It was from, I can't remember, I think it's Seconds Out. I think that's the one that Radio Raheem's on. Shout out to Seconds Out, because it actually was their video. I was actually listening to Cali this morning, and once he went off, my YouTube went on to the next video, and that was the next video in YouTube's queue. And actually was an interesting interview from Radio Raheem with Eddie Hearn. And he was basically asking about, you know, AJ fighting Joshua or Wilder and things like that. And not going to try to encapsulate everything that was talked about in the interview. But there's one thing I want to talk about in particular was that Eddie Hearn was saying, you know, that regardless of what happens with Wilder and Fury, and regardless of what happens in their careers, which is kind of similar to what I said in a video I made yesterday, when I was talking about Joshua wanting to team up with Fury for sparring. The one thing I said in that whole situation was that those guys have to fight. That fight's important. It's big for the sport. It's big over in the UK. And that those guys are going to fight regardless of what happens in their respective careers. And he was saying that he felt like the fight would be pretty easy to make, and that he would do everything he can to make it. He felt like Joshua and Fury would come to terms pretty easily. Aside from that, he actually, the other thing I drew from it was that he was saying how much Joshua wants the Wilder fight and the Fury fight, of course, and that he was saying that, you know, both Wilder and Fury are to the point now that it makes sense to consider a 50-50 fight with either guy versus Anthony Joshua. Well, in a way, I feel like that's good news on one hand, but on the other hand, I kind of feel like, you know, we're back to, you know, just hearing a bunch of talk. You know, let's let them do this behind the scenes and make these fights. He was complaining about Wilder's team still won't talk to him right now, and Wilder doesn't talk to him, and all this understandable with everything that's going on. But the one thing I will say is the fact that he's saying 50-50 in the press, in the you know, in the media, saying it in the wide open, that makes it something that he can't later come back on and say these guys don't deserve XYZ. You know, he's already said it, that he thinks that that's a fair discussion. So let's see where it goes. And if, I mean, to be honest, it all depends on what platform, in my opinion, what platform a fight with Wilder would take place on. Because you have Wilder right now, regardless of what people feel about his numbers, you'll have Wilder right now having had, by the time he fights Joshua, if they were to fight, if he beats Fury and him and Joshua would have started negotiations, Wilder would have had 3 U.S. pay-per-view fights. And Joshua has no U.S. pay-per-view fights. So if that fight was to be on Showtime or Fox, then you have to wonder how the discussion would go. Me personally, I don't care. I don't care what the guys make, how they get paid, who gets what split, whether they pay them flat fees or whatever. I just want to see the fight as a boxing fan. But I just know that those are some of the topics that will come up in a negotiation once they start talking about who should get what. And we could be right back where we were, where negotiations drag on for months and months and months. And at the end of it, we don't get the fight we want to see. You get a sanctioning body coming in, ordering a fight for one guy or the other, because they're tired of waiting on negotiations to come to fruition. You know, to come to something that's amicable that the fighters and their teams can work out and agree on. So we'll see how this shakes out. Right now, we know Deontay Wilder has Tyson Fury problems to deal with. We know Anthony Joshua has problems to deal with either Usyk or Pulev next. And then we don't know what's going to be next for either guy. We know Frank Warren has let out some rumors about Wilder and Fury having a 3rd fight in a row, but you know that's not concrete. That's just what he says. And then also the other thing is that you have to see how this fight plays out. This fight could play out in a manner that a 3rd fight isn't marketable. you know, a third fight can't be sold to the public, so it's not worth it. So we'll see what happens there. I'm eager to see how things are progressing when neither guy has a fight lined up. That's kind of been the theme, that things heat up when one or both guys has fights lined up, then all this talk comes out, and that's not gonna make a fight happen. The negotiations have to be done when neither guy has a fight coming up, and they can actually be talking about making a fight next. There's no point in talking about making a fight 2 fights down the line or anything like that. We've seen so many times in boxing where guys agree to a fight and then one guy loses and it kills the fight. I mean, we had Lennox Lewis and Riddick Bowe agreed to fight after Lewis' defense against Oliver McCall. Well, Lennox Lewis got knocked out by Oliver McCall, and that killed that fight. So it's one of those things where negotiate the fight based on what's available right now. Unless you're negotiating with both guys saying the winner gets this guy, then it's kind of pointless. And even in that situation, you're talking about both guys. You know, AJ on his side has defenses too. So even AJ could lose on his side. So it's kind of just too many moving parts in place right now. I like to see these kind of discussions being had when the guys are available to actually fight each other. And also, I really like for them to be doing the lion's share of these negotiations and discussions behind the scenes. Yeah, it gives us a lot to talk about, but at the end of the day, it's too much double talk and just too much stuff going on that seems to just be basically be media ploys in terms of yeah, it's traction, or it looks like traction, but at the end of the day, behind the scenes, they're not actually making any progress. So that's all I got to say on it. It's D-Lo4 Boxing. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And also, if you haven't subscribed to Marlowe's Corner, go over there and subscribe to Marlowe's Corner, Marlowe's Corner 2. Shout out to Marlowe's Corner, Trey H and the whole block fam. Shout out to the LDBC. I'm out. Peace.